Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is Friday, January 13th, and we are ready for Wild Card Weekend. I am flying Ryan Gilchrist along with.
Tampa Mouth Joel Verone, who hasn't done this in a while, so I've got to do it. It's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday.
Just got to get that in every now and again. So,
Well, it's either that one or the commercial you hate, and I know you won't want to hear that one.
we don't want to go there. That is the official song of hell, as we've already covered, so we're not going to do that. Anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about coaching news. Not a ton going on quite yet, but we did get news about the Rams coaching situation. We're going to talk about the draft order as we know it so far. And then we're going to talk picks and wild card weekend. Joel and I go into the playoffs tied in picks. So I don't have to go contrarian this time just to make up ground.
Yeah, interesting. Because I realize that we really should be the gridiron shuffle with how much we tend to concentrate on the NFL in general. But there was one interesting story that happened this week after you had all the interesting Monday, then kind of a nothing Tuesday. Then all of a sudden, apparently the WWE was sold to a Saudi Arabian firm.
Oh, look at all these protests coming like the LIV tour in
Yeah,
golf. It's going to happen, people.
because I think Vince McMahon, I believe, resigned earlier in the year. There was some kind of impropriety, I think, that happened that caused that. I saw Stephanie McMahon also resigned her position. So it's just kind of interesting if he had any kind of attachment to the WWE at any time. I sort of liked it more when it was the WWF. I think that era seemed to suit it better, but still, it's just a definite turn of a definite page, and sort of wonder what it's going to bring.
Yes, men in spandex bikinis throwing each other is now under Saudi ownership. That seems very odd to think about, but
Yes, especially with how risque the WWE has been at times, maybe less so, I think, than the WWF. They sort of toned it down a little bit from the era of Stone Cold Steve Austin attacking Vince McMahon, quote unquote, when he was in the hospital and other such things, such as bringing the NWO that had their heyday in the WCW and bringing them over to the WWE. So all sorts of crazy stuff.
yeah. I don't know much about wrestling, so I'm going to let Joel lead that conversation. Um,
Well, no, I just since I was a wrestling fan back in the day, not so much now. I think just because you turn them on, you're like, okay, I really tend not to know any of the personalities or any of the characters, but still, when you see that big of an announcement with how much impact the WWE has had on the entire general wrestling continuum, it's a pretty big news story.
yeah. Anyways, some news in the NFL.
Back to the NFL.
Sean McVay has been rumored to be up in the air on what he's going to do with the Rams. He has finally come to a decision, and he will be back as the Rams head coach in 2023. So, no additional job openings on top of what we've already known. I believe right now 5 total openings with the 3 from the regular season and the 2 firings of Arizona and Houston since the
Will
end of
we
the
have
season.
any extra firings after this weekend?
Well, there was talk before the last week of the season if the Dolphins didn't make the playoffs that Mike McDaniels would be at risk along with GM Chris Greer for the Dolphins. There's probably going to be some calls for Brandon Staley. I don't know how loud
Mhm.
that'll get, but we'll go into a little bit of news here. Mike Williams officially ruled out with a fracture in his back that occurred during Week 18, a game that meant nothing to the Chargers. Chargers have lost that game. Some of Brandon Staley's coaching tactics and the constantly going for it on fourth down, not necessarily putting his team in the best spot
He,
at
sh-
times, has
he should be
cost his team.
he should be at least suspended for that pre-workout routine that happened one of those weeks that you're going, what the bleep is he doing on the field?
Yeah, there's NFL players that have celebrated in the end zone with similar motions, and they get fined by pump. And this one definitely would qualify for a fine if it was in
Yeah,
the end
I
zone. But
believe
since
there
it's a
was
pregame warm up, not so much.
a celebration. I believe it was Alexander Madison that did something along those lines when he ended up getting in the touchdown. When he ended up
Yeah,
getting in the
Jamal
end
Williams
zone.
this year had one too for the Lions where he was fined. I think it was about somewhere around $20,000, and they broke it down to how many dollars per pump he got fined. Um, yeah, interesting. Interesting. Someone's gonna be like, "All right, that's $6,247 per pump. He did 3. It's around the 20 grand."
You sort of have to wonder, what the breakdown of that with all the mathematics were like.
Yeah, but losing Mike Williams for the playoffs, it looks like unless they make the Super Bowl, he's going to be out. I guess he's got an outside shot if they get to an AFC Championship game, but will not be available this week against the Jaguars, and almost certainly not next week should they make it that far when they
Ah,
play whoever they would line up with, because we don't know yet.
yeah, because there was talk that Jarrett said that Mike McCarthy was safe, but being that it is Jarrett, we know he can change his mind at absolutely any time.
Hard to fire a coach that went 12-5, got to the back-to-back postseason appearances. Um, I don't see that one happening. Yeah, I think in the playoffs, the only two you're looking at are maybe McDaniels and for the Chargers there that we just talked about. So Brandon Staley, Mike McDaniels, possibly the hot seat candidates, but you're not getting rid of Harbaugh. You're not getting rid of anybody who really won the division. Maybe Todd Bowles with the Buccaneers, if something comes available, could be an option in the NFC. But I think in the NFC, you're looking at your playoff team. Seattle, you didn't expect to be there. The Giants, you didn't expect to be there. Like I just said, you're not going after San Francisco, Minnesota, Dallas, Philadelphia. Those are all pretty locked in. So I think if you're going anywhere for coaching fires, maybe Tampa, maybe Miami, and maybe the Chargers. But
Yeah, because my
we'll see.
Bucks were the U Tree, since I don't want to say the full username, posted a
Ah,
tier maker about, and the Bucks were included in the category. What the bleep are you actually even doing here?
yeah, YouTuber peeing tree, but it starts with the U word. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't think it's that bad.
trying to clean that up a little bit.
I mean, it's just his username. It's not like it's yeah. But that's who posted that, by the way. So let's go over some of the injuries going into this weekend before we get to the games. We'll talk a little bit of news, and then we'll talk about the NFL draft. We'll have to give the results of our Super Bowl of suck, and Bears Broncos was not as much of a barn burner as we were hoping it would be. So Seattle at San Francisco. That's the early game on Saturday for the Seahawks. Questionable all around for these 4 players: DJ Dallas, Phil Haynes, the guard, Shelby Harris, and Xavier Crawford at corner. So going in relatively healthy for the Seattle Seahawks. For the Niners, 2 players out: Jimmy Garoppolo and cornerback Ambry Thomas. So injuries should not play a massive factor in that one. For the Chargers, there's only 1 player on the list, and it was the one we just mentioned. Mike Williams officially out with the back fracture. That's going to be a big loss, but the Jaguars do not come in 100% healthy. All listed as questionable. I believe most of these players will play, if not all of them. Wide receiver Jamal Agnew and Kendrick Pryor, both questionable, along with quarterback Trevor Lawrence, offensive lineman Brandon Sheriff, and Ross Matizek, the safety for Jacksonville, all listed as questionable. Arguably, the most injured team goes into the first game on Sunday, Miami at Buffalo, and that would be the Dolphins out already. Tua and Raheem Mostert. That is 2 massive pieces for the Dolphins. The Bills have, I think it was a 13.5-point spread last I had heard. It was the largest wild card weekend spread ever because
Not
it's going
so
to be
super
Skyler.
wild card weekend.
Yeah, because it's going to be Skylar Thompson at quarterback for the Dolphins, the mastermind, the engine behind the 11-6
Three,
victory of the New York Jets.
three third string quarterbacks taking part in not so super wild card weekend.
Yeah. Also for the Dolphins, offensive guard Liam Eichenberg is doubtful. Questionable is Teddy Bridgewater, who would be our backup if he can play, but it might be Mike Glennon at backup. Alec Ingold, Cedric Wilson, Brandon Shell, Teron Armstead, offensive tackle, who's been extraordinary for the team, Kendall Lamb, and Bradley Chubb, all questionable for the Dolphins. So again, arguably the most injured team. For the Bills, this does not include IR players, so Damar Hamlin's not going to be brought up here. Questionable Isaiah McKenzie and Jordan Phillips for the Bills, who are a heavy favorite. The Giants, nobody on the injury report as they go to face the Minnesota Vikings. So they're going to go all hands on deck. Vikings, 3 questionable players. Kene Nguanu, who has got an illness, so I expect him to get better and play. Cam Dantzler and Harrison Smith, both in the secondary. Those are big losses for a bad secondary, but fortunately, the Giants aren't passing team too much. For the next one, the nightcap on Sunday, Ravens at Bengals. Already out. Lamar Jackson, Tylan Wallace, and Brandon Stevens. Also questionable quarterback Tyler Huntley. Sounds like he's going to be good to go, but that could be a third-string quarterback going there. For the Bengals, offensive guard Alex Kappa is out. Nobody else on the injury report. And for the Bucks and Cowboys, we're actually still too far out to have official active, inactive out designations so far because they have an extra day of practice. So we'll start to see those trickle in over the next few days. But that's where we stand on the injury front as of right now. So
Going to the next level with Lamar Jackson, David J. Chow, otherwise known as Pro Football Doc, actually posted this extreme swelling approaching 6 weeks post PCL is unusual. I absolutely love when the internet goes post is unusual. Would mean grade 3 PCL or possible associated cartilage injury, which would put potential surgery on the table, contract related or not. This news is bad. R.E. Lamar Jackson.
yeah, Lamar Jackson is going to get paid eventually. But if he does go down with an injury, it's more likely he does get that franchise tag from the Ravens because they don't want to designate their long-term future someone who's got a knee surgery if they don't have to. But the Ravens, if they're not going to have Lamar Jackson, they're definitely going to be in a hole. Unfortunately, Miami and Baltimore both look like they're going to be very shorthanded on the offensive signal callers side of things. So let's go to the games. And we will start with that first one on Saturday afternoon. Seattle at San Francisco. Seattle is a Cinderella story in the NFC. It was a team I expected to have the number 1 overall pick, and they got the number 7 seed in the wild card. I think Pete Carroll deserves Coach of the Year mentions and votes. I don't know if he's going to win. There are a few very good candidates this year. But to get in the playoffs with Geno Smith, who set some Seattle Seahawks quarterbacking records, you got with a very young, I think it's the youngest roster in football, not to mention Ken Walker at running back, a rookie who's been fantastic. Seattle is a team that maybe is going to be on the rise sooner rather than later. We'll have to see how the rookies from this year continue to progress and what they can do in the draft going into next year. Of course, Seattle's going to have a top 5 pick, courtesy of the Denver Broncos getting Russell Wilson because it worked out so well for the Broncos.
Yep.
But Seattle goes into San Francisco against a team that has been red hot since the trade acquisition of Christian McCaffrey, have not lost a game. They are a 10-game winning streak. We'll do our Super Bowl picks after we do these picks, but for me, San Francisco has to be one of the heavy favorites because of how well they've been playing, even though they have Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, a third-string quarterback on this roster who has played exceptionally well since he came in. In fact, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm hoping Skylar Thompson can look as good as Brock Purdy's looked the last few weeks. San Francisco with Christian McCaffrey, the offense has been much better. They have a defense that can shut down pretty much anyone. And Deebo Samuel looks like he's going to be back to full health. So the Niners getting healthier when a lot of teams are not so lucky. San Francisco is the 2 seed. So if Philadelphia does fall, they'd have the inside track to host for the NFC Championship game, but they have to get by Seattle first. Divisional matchup. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. Seattle going to look to pull the upset. San Francisco going to look to hold home field advantage. Who gets the job done?
As you pointed out earlier, Seattle has performed with Geno Smith far beyond anyone's expectations, but unfortunately, I think his amazing story tends to end right here this week, week 19 in the wild card round. Both wins weren't even close when you tend to look at the regular season matchups between the two teams. Seattle scored a total of 20 points in both games combined against San Francisco. San Francisco scored 48 points combined across both games. That ain't going to get her done. I know it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a regular season, but I think San Francisco is just cocky enough and talented enough to get it done. I'm picking the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to take San Francisco as well. Don't forget the recent flooding that really hammered the Bay Area. The Niners could see themselves as a source of inspiration and hope for their community. Not that usually translates on the field as much as people would make it out to be, but it is going to be a factor. But San Francisco is possibly the most talented team remaining in the NFL playoffs who qualified. I think the addition of Christian McCaffrey was just ideal for this team to get such a great running back in such a great running back system. And then, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, this offense can really pop. They don't need someone who's going to throw the ball 55, 60 yards down the field. They can give to Brock Purdy just, 10-yard outs to these guys, and they can make the plays happen downfield or at least keep the chains moving until they can break that one play.
And it doesn't matter if it seems they have an injury. Boom, they stick somebody in there. They do just as well.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're hearing names like Ray McLeod stepping in with Debo Samuel, and you're like, who? Oh, I remember this guy. He was the returner for the Steelers, and now he's making big plays for a Super Bowl contender. So I'm going to take San Francisco as well. Again, I think they might be one of the top 2 or 3 favorites in the NFL to take the Super Bowl at this point, but only time will tell if they can get the job done throughout the entirety of the NFL playoffs. Next up, we go to the Sunday or Saturday night game. The Los Angeles Chargers going to Jacksonville to play the AFC South champion Jacksonville Jaguars, something we've only been able to say one other time in history.
And not last year.
The Chargers, 10-7, a very good year, even though Herbert was not as good as we were hoping for in fantasy this year. He was good enough on the field. Remember, he did have the rib cartilage injury that slowed him down.
Way better last year.
Well, again, that ribbon cartilage injury he suffered in week 2 took a lot longer to heal than people realized. That limited his mobility, limited his ability to throw down the field. And then once they were healthy, he never had his full complement of weapons. So yeah. I don't think it's a condemnation of Justin Herbert this season. It's just a reminder that maybe the high end is not as high with Justin Herbert as it is with the Joe Burrow or Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen in fantasy circles.
Because you don't realize how good Justin Herbert is until you saw the video where he's just literally standing there flat-footed and just heaves the ball like a freaking cannon. You're just going, okay, he good.
Yeah. The Chargers defense has started to come around a little bit of late. They're not a great unit. You can definitely run on the ground, so Travis Etienne might be the key to this game for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the Chargers offense can get the job done, but they haven't looked as good when they don't have their full complement of weapons. And again, no Mike Williams. So this could be where they need Josh Palmer or DeAndre Carter to step back up and fill that void left by Michael Carter. The Jaguars, though, they've been a pretty hot team. 5 in a row to get into the playoffs. They seem to have turned the corner.
Including humbling the Tennessee Titans. That was big.
Yeah, they beat the Tennessee Titans in an ugly game that everything was on the line. Etienne, Trevor Lawrence look like they're coming into their own. Doug Peterson's got this culture starting to turn the corner. There's a belief that Jacksonville could be a good team, sort of like Seattle. We expected them to not be this good, and here they are in the playoffs at 9-8, winning the AFC South. So this is a tough one for me to pick personally. I could see this one going either way, but Joel, who do you got?
Because this one is just the question is how much does the Williams injury come back to haunt Staley in the playoffs? Lawrence better than Herbert. Eckler, I think, better than Etienne. But the Jags as a whole unit, I think, are a better team than the Chargers. You have Peterson is so far above Staley with coaching proficiency. Chargers get bounced unless the Jags, for some reason, are totally flat. As using the only regular season meeting as a measuring stick between the two teams, the Jags absolutely stomped the Chargers. It wasn't close. They freaking stomped them.
It was 38-10.
I think we expect more, maybe a little bit closer because the Chargers play a little bit better, but I think we expect more of the same in the round. I'm picking the Jags.
Yeah, I'm on Jacksonville as well, mostly because I've seen what they've been without Mike Williams, without the full complement of weapons. That offense does take a step back. And the strength of Jacksonville Jaguars is running the ball. You saw that hurt them last week against Tennessee. They got the win, but Tennessee had a great run defense. It slowed down this offense the Chargers are one of those teams you were targeting in fantasy if you had the running back. Expect them to do big things with Travis Etienne and on the ground.
Mm.
And once they get the ground game going, it's going to open up the pass. I think the Jaguars get the job done and advance past the first round of the playoffs for the first time in possibly like 99, I think might be the last. No. They got to the AFC title game in 17.
Yeah,
So,
because
been a few years.
the number one thing you really have to criticize Staley for is why were the starters playing that late against the Broncos when they were locked in the number 5 spot and of the AFC bracket in the playoffs, and a win could not help them move up at all. Why?
Unless he knows something about his coaching future that we don't, and maybe that 11th win would have helped secure him going forward. Again, we mentioned him as one of the coaches that could be on the hot seat after the playoffs. I do want to make a mention that none of those three are necessarily prime candidates to be fired, but there is at least enough talk, and the situation does merit the names being brought up. Next up, though, Miami at Buffalo.
Oi, oi, oi.
If Tua was playing in this game, I think this would be one of the best games of the weekend. We saw how Tua led the Dolphins into Buffalo with the snow game about a month ago and kept that game close. In fact, they were in control until the snow started coming down. They had 2 epic games back and forth this season, but without Tua, the Dolphins have not been the same team. So it will be Skylar Thompson, a quarterback.
You absolutely have to hand it to Mike McDaniels this year. As a quirky a personality as he is, he really, really, really helped Tua to completely do a complete 360 from where he was last year. Just all the problems with Brian Flores, all the personal doubt, not really seeming to click with the coach. And now you just see all the play back and forth between McDaniels and Tua, all the kidding, all the mic'd up moments. It's like a total, complete different team.
Yeah, I think he's a good fit for this team. I do think if we had Tua the entire season, we would be the 5th seed at worst and possibly, even had a shot at winning the division. But Tua missing so much time with concussions is alarming. Kudos to the Dolphins and the medical professionals for just making sure he is 100% before they even cleared him to come back. And they ruled him out Wednesday. Hey, he's not cleared today. He's not playing. So the Dolphins putting the players' health above the team's success is something to be commended. But when you talk about the on-the-field game on Sunday, that probably isn't going to bode to good things. Again, no Raheem Mostert, so Jeff Wilson's going to be the bell cow back. We'll see if he can get the job done. You can run on Buffalo, but when they don't have a passing attack as well as they normally do, because Skylar Thompson's not quite as capable, that could be an issue. But Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill could get something going. You never know. Skylar Thompson has gotten a win, and they might let him open it up and say, hey, we're going to need you to come out and win this game. He said against the Jets, the goal was don't blow this game. Against the Bills, they might say, hey, if we're going to win this, you're going to need to show up and be special. So maybe they open it up. Maybe Miami surprises some people. Buffalo, everything going on this season has been very good for Buffalo, with the exception of Damar Hamlin's health scare of a couple weeks ago. I fully expect Damar Hamlin to be in attendance on the game on Sunday to give an extra emotional boost to this team. He has been released from the hospital in Buffalo. He is back home. He does not have any major health concerns. I'm sure if he does go to the game, he'll be in a box. He'll be with people that if something does happen, he'll be fine. But add that to the fact Josh Allen is a perennial MVP candidate. Stephon Diggs is amazing. James Cook and Devin Singletary on the ground have been getting better and better as the season goes along. Buffalo's defense leaves a little bit to be desired. This might be the weak point of this team right now. They're not locking down people as much as you would hope, but Buffalo should have probably been the 1 seed if they, we never know if they would have beaten the Bengals on that Monday Night Football game. But if they would have, and that game would have concluded, they'd have been the number 1 overall seed. We'd be talking Miami, Kansas City. That being said, Buffalo coming in very, very healthy. Miami, not so much. I don't think I need to ask, but who you got?
Yeah, this game, Bills are on a mission for 3 for, of course, Damar Hamlin. Dolphins, I think, are the first postseason casualty. I would not be shocked that if the Dolphins lose, the Dolphins fire McDaniels, but I think that is a huge mistake, as you said. He is a good fit to this team. He's helping Tua. He's helping the team. He's teaching them how to win. And you don't want to end up having a situation where it's boom, Brian Flores trying to get them used to his system. And then boom, okay, he's gone. Here's Mike McDaniels. Okay, trying to get them used to his system. And then if he's gone, it's a whole new system that the Dolphins have to get used to again next year. And that has to be tiring for a team trying to figure out who the head coach is and what they want and what they expect because every single leader is different. So yeah, sorry to say this, flying, but Dolphins are toast. I'm going Bills.
Yeah, I mean, you don't become the largest playoff underdog, wild card weekend underdog ever without some problems, and that's where Miami's at right now. Skylar Thompson, frankly, is just not good enough to compete with Josh Allen at this point. I fully expect Buffalo to win. If you're a Dolphins fan, you're hoping it's close, and you can at least say, "Hey, that was respectable." Give yourself some hope for next year. If we can keep Tua healthy, it's going to be better. But what you don't want to see is Buffalo flatten Miami 35-0 kind of deal.
Like the college football championship. Good God.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to see anything like that. I do think if they let go of Mike McDaniels, the only person that would possibly be welcomed would be Sean Payton by Dolphins fans because he is an all-time level coach. And then the whole tampering allegations would get brought back up as well. So I don't think they should fire Mike McDaniels. He got into
So
the
you don't
playoffs
think so you don't
with
think
a
the
ton of
Dolphins should
injuries.
go after Nathaniel Hackett? That would
No, I don't think anybody
hashtag that
should.
would
I don't think
hashtag
anybody
that was a
should for any
joke.
role ever. He's awful. But yeah, I'm taking Buffalo. Just unfortunately, if this had been Tua, I might have been tempted to go after Miami. It would have been a much better game, but with Skylar Thompson, the confidence is just not there. All right, then we go to the 4 o'clock game on Sunday. The New York Giants go to Minnesota. The Giants head coach Brian Daboll, again, first year coach coming from Buffalo, has been fantastic. Likely the coach of the year, getting the Giants, who have been a perennial basement dweller team. I think they hadn't been above 500 at any point before this year since 2016, 2017. It had been a very long time since they were even 1-0 or 2-1 above 500, let alone the end of the season like they are now. Minnesota's looked odd. They win a lot of close games and then they get just smacked. So we never really know what team we're getting with the Vikings. This is not a 1 o'clock game for Kirk Cousins. I know the memes and the jokes about him only being able to play at 1 o'clock. That's a factor here. Dalvin Cook did go down with an injury, should be good to go. No limitations, but a lot of good players for both sides. The Giants, Daniel Jones looks like he's going to earn himself a contract to come back to the Giants this year. He played fantastic. Saquon Barkley, a free agent. They're not going to let him walk out of the door, but he is a free agent. The wide receiver depth for the Giants is a real concern, but they can get by piece by piece. We even saw Kenny Golladay get a touchdown last week. That's a name you haven't thought about for a while, I'm sure. For the Vikings, I mean, Kirk Cousins is going to be the beginning and end of this one. If he can show up in a big-time environment, which has not been his forte. It's not prime time. It's big-time environment, standalone games. We saw it against the Colts. Yeah, they had the massive comeback, but that first half was brutal. I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, guys like that. They're going to show up and do the best they can. But the Vikings defense is a little bit leaky, so this could be a higher scoring game. They played a few weeks ago, and Minnesota had to win on a long last-second field goal against the Giants in Minnesota. So this is not an upset, I think, if the Giants win. I don't think this is an uneven match in any way, shape, or form, even though Minnesota does have a few more wins. But, Joel, who do you got?
As you pointed out, you never know which Minnesota team is going to show up, and definitely the whole 1 o'clock thing is not just a meme; it's real. You have some definite concerns and injuries with the team for Minnesota, as you have the center who got hurt with the Week 17 loss to the Packers. You have that's possible that the starting center might return, but may not be completely healthy because of a back injury. Moreover, you tend to have Kirk Cousins, who he's tends to be used to not having a lot of pressure, and the Giants currently rank fifth when it comes to applying the pressure. You saw that final week with Nick Foles on his back after Thibodeau. Of course, yeah, you have the ill-advised celebration after all that, but Thibodeau, you tend to look back through the entire year. Thibodeau is definitely a force to be reckoned with on the field. Now, granted, Giants are a lot better than the Colts by far. But I just tend to think that pressure is going to be a problem for Kirk Cousins because, once again, you never know because of that whole crazy point differential. You never know. Is it going to be the Minnesota Vikings that stunned the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo with that amazing Justin Jefferson catch? Or is it going to be the Minnesota Vikings who got stomped by the Dallas Cowboys? Or is it going to be the Minnesota Vikings who all they had to do was beat the Detroit Lions? Granted, not an easy task this year to claim the banner, but they couldn't get the job done. I'm going New York Giants, not because I have a tremendous amount of faith leaning towards them over Minnesota, because I think both are good teams. This is one of those games I think it really could go either way. It could literally be a win by 1 point type game, but I'm going the Giants for the sort of the sole fact that they haven't posted any stupid pictures of them being on boats before this game yet. Yeah, go Giants.
Right.
Obviously, somebody said no social media pictures this year, please. That was a bad jinx. So go in the G-men, and I think they can do some damage to Minnesota. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a good game, but I think they get the dub.
Like you said, it's going to be a close game, and Minnesota's done very well in those games. So I'm going to take the Vikings in this one. I really think this is going to be a very balanced matchup. I think the Giants are playing with house money at this point. Their fans are going to be happy with the season, even if they do come up short against Minnesota. And it's a hard fought game. If they get blown out, maybe the vibe is a little more negative going into the offseason. But I think Minnesota is just the better team. I think it's going to be a razor thin margin. I don't expect Kirk Cousins to play his 400-yard, 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown kind of games you had a couple times this season. It's going to be a little more of a grind here, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in the New York Giants receiving core. And that's how you're going to beat Minnesota. I think it's going to be a close game. Expect like a 24-23 kind of thing, but I think Minnesota comes out on top. So, Joel, we both see a very close game just going the opposite directions. And we move on to Sunday Night Football. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson probably skews this heavily in favor of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Baltimore Ravens, with Lamar Jackson, are a Super Bowl contender. Without, they struggle to be – they're like Miami. When you lose your starting quarterback, you struggle to be a viable playoff team. J.K. Dobbins is going to be back. Gus Edwards cleared concussion protocol, but the wide receiving core for the Ravens is already razor thin. Deshaun Jackson was a key contributor for a while. Demarcus Robinson is your number one right now, so it's pretty rough out there for the Ravens. For the Bengals,
I don't think a lot of people in playoff fantasy football are going to be picking from the Ravens pool.
No, I don't think so. For the Bengals, everybody's healthy. Joe Burrow's been playing on an MVP level the last few weeks. They're one of the hottest teams in football. I think they've won 8 in a row, not counting the no contest game against Buffalo. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon can all get the job done. Cincinnati's defense has been slowly improving throughout the season, and I really think that the Bengals have a legit shot to go back-to-back in the AFC to the Super Bowl, defend their title. That's who's reigning right now, if you did happen to forget. I think we'd be looking forward to this a lot more if Lamar Jackson's knee wasn't still swelling and he would be available. Tyler Huntley's a capable backup, and they fought well last week with the third stringer, Anthony Brown, at quarterback that no one had ever heard of, really, unless you're a Ravens fan. But it's hard to see the Bengals really being challenged by the Ravens with Tyler Huntley, but stranger things happen. So who do you got?
Yeah, because Baltimore is lucky that they're here, and I think they will soon to be not here, thanks to the Cincinnati Bengals, as of course Baltimore Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely registered 8 receptions in a game high buck 3 for 13 targets in Week 18 against the Cincinnati Bengals, but it was also Likely's first 100-yard game in the NFL. And you have to wonder, with the question of Mark Andrews sort of hanging over the Baltimore Ravens as they've just been really banged up, how much will Likely figure into Baltimore's offense, such as it is? And how much is the other question, how much will Burrow feast on a banged up and worn out Ravens D? I tend to not think this game is going to be close by any stretch of the imagination, and be very surprised if how much of a fight Baltimore can put up, especially with, as you mentioned, third string quarterback, all the Ravens who are banged up. It a slam dunk Cincinnati.
Yeah, this seems like another free square on the pick'em card. That in Buffalo this week. It's going to be Cincinnati. I don't know how much more you have to say. Tyler Huntley is just not the same level as Lamar Jackson. Doesn't impose that risk to run the ball that opens up the defense, to let those not great pass catchers go crazy. Isaiah Likely is a good tight end replacement for Mark Andrews, but you need more than a couple tight ends to beat the Bengals. The Bengals are going to be a tough out, and this would set up Buffalo, Cincinnati next week in the divisional round. So I think that's something a lot of fans are wanting to see, obviously without any health issues on the field. So I think that's what happens, and we move on to Monday Night Football. Dallas goes to Tampa to face your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs, the lone team getting in the playoffs with a sub 500 record, but for what it's worth, they have been sneaky good against Dallas the last few years, beating them every time they've played since Brady's been a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. However, Dallas 12-4. They have an elite level defense. They've got a running game that is going to cause some problems, and they also have CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup on the outside, as well as Dalton Schultz, who can just cause some havoc in the tight end slot. So a lot of offensive weapons. The Tampa Bay defense is as healthy as been all year, so they've been playing much better of late. Tom Brady has seemingly gotten back on track the last couple of weeks, not mentioning week 18 where he's pulled, but they got Mike Evans going in week 17. Chris Godwin's coming back from that ACL nicely now in the second half of the season. They got to get the ground game going, whether it's Fournette or Rachaad White. You got to get that ground game going against Dallas to get some balance, but for a team that comes in below 500, this is not a terrible matchup for Tampa Bay. Tom Brady, again, has a good track record with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against Dallas, and the high turnover rate for Dak Prescott, something that's not talked about often, but has gotten some mainstream traction lately, and we've seen him have some costly turnovers in recent weeks that have made the games more difficult to win for Dallas. So, you're a Bucs fan. Are you going to pick the home team, or are you going to go with the We Dem Boys?
As you mentioned, Brady is undefeated versus the Cowboys, and I tend to think Evans and Godwin are at full power heading into the postseasons. Bucs running game, you mentioned that, very sus recently, so definite cause for concern, but they need to get that kicked into gear. But I tend to think just because of the early season victory that the Bucs ended up shocking the Cowboys on prime time, and this is prime time again. I tend to think that the Bucs should be able to get by the struggling Cowboys, as all of a sudden they're not as much the juggernaut they were earlier in the year when you had, okay, should it be Zeke, should it be Pollard, or are we going to rough you up with? And so, yeah, and the Cowboys did not handle the Titans. They did handle the Titans with some hiccups, but they got stomped on by the Sour Grapes Commanders. And I think the Bucs' fortunes past the card are uncertain, but I tend to think the Cowboys scheduled playoffs collapse should happen this week. So I know you tend to look at both of these teams on paper and you look more towards the Cowboys than the Bucs, especially after that Arizona game when they had to come back versus one of the worst defenses in the entire freaking NFL. I'm going, what are you guys doing? But I don't know why. There's just something intangible about this game that I think the Bucs can get past the Cowboys. Just what lays after that, not too sure. As I said, a lot of uncertainty, but yeah, I'm going Homer. I'm picking the Bucs here.
Yeah, I think the intangible here is that you're a Bucs fan, because I'm taking Dallas in this one. I know Tom Brady's had good luck against Dallas so far with the Buccaneers, but Dallas is a very, very talented, top-heavy team. They can shut this Tampa Bay offense down, and Tampa's had a good opportunity to do that to themselves a lot of the season. This is going to be, I think, a closer game than a lot would think as you look at the records, 12-5 versus 8-9. But I do think Dallas and the coaching staff has some inclination that they don't make at least a decent playoff run. You go into Philadelphia and play close and lose to the number one seeded Eagles by 2 or 3 points on the road. I think you can go and, all right, that's a fair game. You lose to a team that's below 500 in the playoffs, it says something different. That does put Mike McCarthy and staff on notice. I just think Dallas gets it done. I really do think they're the better team in this matchup, and I'm just going to trust that. So, with that being said, you've got the Giants advancing, which would set up them with the Eagles the week after, and then San Francisco, Tampa Bay. You've also got the seeds holding in the AFC, which would be Kansas City, Jacksonville, Buffalo, Cincinnati. I've got Minnesota, San Francisco, Dallas, Philadelphia. So we both have an NFC East showdown in the divisional round. And then both have Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Kansas City in the next round. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Joel and I 173, 96, and 2 entering the postseason. So a little bit of a sprint to see who gets the job done. Joel's won the last 2 years, but I've been behind at this point, having to go contrarian. 2 different picks here, though. So if one of us is right and the other one's wrong on those 2 picks, it really sets them up to succeed in our little pick contest that we've been doing. And let's move on to the NFL draft. I am wearing a Chicago Bears jersey today, not because the Bears are good, but because the Bears are very, very bad. They've lost 10 in a row and have won the number 1 overall pick by a half game over the Houston Texans, who picked number 2. The Arizona Cardinals will pick 3rd. New head coaching openings for the number 2, number 3, and number 4 and 5 picks as the Colts and Broncos round out the top 5. So a lot of new head coaching opportunities right there. The Denver pick goes to Seattle. The Rams would have had the 6th seed. That goes to Detroit. So they have both of those teams go to high draft picks. The Las Vegas Raiders at 7, Atlanta Falcons at 8, Carolina Panthers at 9. New Orleans would have had the 10th pick, but they traded that away. That goes to Philadelphia. Philadelphia with a top 10 pick. Tennessee will have pick number 11. Cleveland would have had 12, but in the Deshaun Watson trade, that goes to Houston as well. So Houston has picks 2 and 12. The New York Jets pick number 13. A lot of question marks around their quarterback situation going forward. We'll see if maybe the Jets are one of those candidates to move up. The New England Patriots 14th, Green Bay Packers 15, Washington, Pittsburgh, Detroit in that order 16, 17, and 18. Pittsburgh won 4 in a row to try and make the playoffs, to really cracked down their draft pick opportunities. So Chicago, in theory, does not need a quarterback. There are rumors that they might look at one anyways, which would be dumb. Houston definitely needs a quarterback. Indianapolis needs a quarterback. So there's going to be a market for them to trade out of the number 1 overall pick. You can look at the Raiders. You can look at the Panthers. You can look at the Jets and say, hey, I need a quarterback. What are you going to give me to jump ahead of Houston? Houston's going to take a quarterback at 2 no matter what. So there's going to be, I think, a little bit of a bidding war for that number 1 overall pick. Chicago, I don't think is actually going to pick at that spot. But all that being said, Chicago does have the number 1 overall pick right now. And Chicago is your Super Bowl of Suck champion. Not a surprise. The Broncos did get a win over the Chargers and had a pretty good performance in Week 18, where the Bears got smacked around by the Minnesota Vikings. So the Bears, number 1 overall pick and the Super Bowl of Suck champions. It's a banner year for Chicago, as ineptitude is on the menu, and they are the master chef of the NFL in failure. Whew. All right. Well, we are looking ahead now to our final thoughts. So, Joel, it is your time.
Yeah, that's my final thought. Is I like the meme from the Vikings division. Congratulations, NFC North. Vikings, of course, number 3 seed in the playoffs. Chicago, as you just mentioned, number 1 picked in the draft. The Lions knocked out Green Bay out of the playoffs, and the Packers, with the participation star, participated in the 2022 season. So as we wonder if this is the last we've seen, at least in the Green Bay, of one Aaron Rodgers. And go Bucks! Hope you beat them boys. As the other 2A final thought, somebody ended up doing a funny meme about Dak Prescott because he said, and this is definitely me, it's not what he really said, quote, the NFL should not schedule Monday playoff games during wild card weekend. It isn't fair. I have a cruise booked for next Sunday, and I have to provide 7 days notice for cancellation. Should be okay. There's a lot at stake. It's a Disney cruise. Dak Prescott on playoffs, harshing his vacay. Of course, a meme and not a real quote from Dak Prescott.
Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. We saw how he left the field on Sunday night after the loss to the Lions. He refused to give his jersey to Jameson Williams and the Lions. I'm going to hold on to this one, was his quote. Left the field seemingly on the verge of tears, it looked like to me, arm in arm with his friend and teammate Randall Cobb. Kind of gave a little salute and goodbye to the Green Bay fans. Now, we'll see long term. What's that?
I think he knows.
We'll see what he's going to do long term. Whether he's going to hang it up, he's going to come back to Green Bay, he's going to go somewhere else. The Packers GM, Brian Gutekunst, says he is going to take some time. The Rodgers are going to take his time making this decision. It's not going to be a hostage situation like it had been the last couple of years where won't he? Aaron Rodgers is going to make the decision. He's not going to hold the team hostage. But the Packers say Jordan Love is ready to play. He looked all right in a couple of appearances last couple of years. So maybe the Packers have the third straight Hall of Fame level quarterback sitting on their roster. Of course, they went from Brett Favre, the welfare man, to Aaron Rodgers, the what's the psychedelic drug he was doing? I can't remember what it's called because I don't do it. And now maybe Jordan Love will have a great career and some oddities of his own down the line. But if this is the end of the road for Aaron Rodgers, he is one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks in NFL history, a la the Dan Marinos, the John Elways, your Patrick Mahomes when it's all said and done. Not necessarily the best winner, only one Super Bowl, which I think he would consider a little bit of a disappointment with his talent level and his opportunity. But that being said, he is just physically a very talented. He is a cult hero in Green Bay. He is beloved. I've got his throwback jersey in my closet right now, and be sad to see another great quarterback retire. That is not Tom Brady. And with that being said, if this is the end of Aaron Rodgers, I hope whatever he does in the next life is what he wants to do, because he's a very interesting guy. He would not be good at commentary, so he's probably going to step away from football in a lot of ways. And maybe he's just one of the guys who wants to go and live his life for the first time ever. But we'll see what Aaron Rodgers decides to do. The Packers have a bright future. If he comes back, they've got a young offense. They can use the draft picks they've got to really build around him and be a contender again next year. They weren't far off this year, and they got better as the season went along. So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers watches on, and if this is the time, it was fun to watch while we had him around. All right, well, that's our time. Wildcard weekend is upon us. The fantasy season has concluded, and that's sad. We're going to miss it immensely. Only 7 more months until draft season starts again. The trophy behind me will be vacating this building in the next week or so. I forgot to take it to the guy on Sunday. No hockey game on this Sunday, so it'll probably be end of next week. It'll be gone. And, yeah, then we'll start looking ahead towards Super Bowl and then free agency, the draft, and the dark time of the NFL where not a lot goes on. It is fully a 12-month-a-year season, but it's a lot slower in the spring and summer. Anyways, I am Flying Ryan Gilchrist, along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
And yeah, we will be back next week. We'll probably be a 1-show week the rest of the way, as we're only going to be recapping the 6 games and then picking the 4 games of divisional weekend. And yeah, it'll start to slow down from there. So